Hello and welcome to the Python Code Challenge 4. This is masking strings. So this is the fourth challenge in this series where we are focusing primarily at the moment at beginner level and looking at manipulating strings. So you can see from this tutorial that we're going to be working with strings, slicing, right justifying, APS, and regular expression. So those are some of the tools that we're going to utilize to have a look at some of the different solutions to this problem. So this is the problem or challenge in challenge 4. Write a new function that passes in a credit card number or just a number and returns the masked number. So only show the last 4 digits of the credit card number. So most credit cards have 16-digit number across the front. So what we're trying to do here, for example, is create a function that takes in a number like this 16-digit number, and then returns a number that's masked except for the last 4 digits. And what will be interesting to see if we can then create a function which potentially we can then choose how many digits we want to mask. So go ahead and have a think about the solution if you like. We will then walk through the solution or a solution, and then you can stay on and we'll have a look at some other different solutions. We'll go through some theory and some explanations. So you can take a look at all the different solutions. There's a link in the description of the video that will take you to GitHub, and you can have a look at, like I said, all the different examples that I show you in this tutorial. So let's go ahead and have a look at solution 1. So we're going to need some sort of string which will kind of simulate our credit card number. We'll do this first of all without a function, and then we'll move to more kind of a function approach. So let's create a credit card number, 16-digit number. There we go. So we're assuming that someone's maybe typed that in, and now we're going to work with it. So let's say, for example, let's go ahead and grab the length of this, which should be, of course, 16. So there we go. So at the moment, we're storing the number 16 in the string length variable. So we know how many digits in total that we have. Right, so next of all, let's create a mask. Okay, so we're going to say, let's get the string length minus 4. So we've identified essentially how many items or how many numbers we want to actually show, for example. So we now know, for example, that we've got a number here in mask. So originally we're storing 16 here in string length, and now we're going to minus 4. That gives us 12. So essentially we now know that 12 of these numbers should be masked. So now we have the number 12. What we can now do is we can now make a slice, and we can just simply just grab these numbers. So how do we know where to start the grab or the slice? Well, we've got this number here, the 12. So we can say that we want to slice from 12 all the way to the end. So let's go ahead and do that. So show string. This is where we're going to keep the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 at the end here. So we're going to say str, and then we're going to create some sort of slice. So the number in mask is 12. So start from 12 and then go to the end. So start from 12 and then store all the numbers up into the end. So 1, 2, 3, 4 is now stored in show string. Okay, so now we've got the mask. Let's just go ahead and now print. So let's say we want to, first of all, show all the mask numbers. How many mask numbers do we want to show? Well, we're going to times that, multiply that by mask, because we know that there's 12 numbers we want to mask. So essentially, by utilizing the multiplier here, we're just basically going to make 12 of these characters. And then we're going to use that concatenation there and then show the numbers that are left. These are the numbers that we've sliced at the end here. So let's go ahead and say show string. So what will get printed out is 12 of these asterisks here, plus the numbers that we've stored here or sliced. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So let's go ahead and, oh, no, not print. Let's run the example. So here I'm on Mac, so Python 3, and then example, and there we go. So you can see here the key to a solution is understanding how to slice numbers. So by all means, if you're never too sure or if you've forgotten, just use the print wherever you need it, just to print something out, just to check to see it's what you're expecting. So here you can see I've sliced the numbers and it's storing now 1, 2, 3, and 4. So what happens if I, for example, do this the other way around? So if I slice the other side, let's see what happens. You can see essentially we've just grabbed the opposite numbers here. So if you're never too sure, utilize the print to help you out. Okay, so that was solution 1. So let's have a look. Of course, in the example, we're asked to create a function. So let's have another example now. I'll go through another example where we actually utilize a function. We pass this number into a function and then process. And we'll work this solution out in a slightly different way. So let's go ahead now and create a function approach to this solution. Or let's create a solution with a function approach. That probably sounds better. Right, now let's start off with the idea. What do we want to pass into the function? So let's ultimately pass in a number. So 16 numbers. And then we want to also define how many numbers we want to mask. So for example, 4. So we're going to pass that into the function. So let's go ahead and call this, for example, masking. So we're going to create a function called masking. And we're going to pass these numbers in. Okay, so now we've got that in place. Let's go ahead and now create a new function called masking. So we want to take in 2 numbers. That's going to be the actual credit card number and then the amount of numbers we want to mask. Right, so now we have that in place. Let's go ahead now and, for example, work out or create the actual mask. So we know that, for example, in this case, 12 of those numbers need to be masked. So we could make, for example, a loop. So for example, for num or for n in number. So the numbers are going to be passed into the number through the function here into number. So we're going to grab those numbers, and what we're going to do is we're going to work out how many numbers we need to actually make a mask for. So we can also do that by slicing again and say minus n. So we can take this number set and we can say, well, let's take, if we're going to pass 4 across, sorry, that should be 4, should it? That should say mask. So if we're going to pass 4 in, what we're going to do here then is we're going to take that 4 away from the 16. That's going to give us 12 numbers left. So for each of those numbers, we're going to loop through and then we're going to put that into some sort of variable. So we'll change that to x. So that's what's happening. We're going to loop through this number set, and then because we're saying slice minus 4 essentially, that's going to basically take 4 numbers off and just leave us with 12 numbers. So we now know that we need 12 asterisks, for example. So we need to mask 12 numbers. So let's go ahead now, and first of all, I think we're going to need some sort of holder for this mask. So let's say string equals. Okay, so we're going to store the numbers that need to be masked there, or we're going to store the mask there. And let's go for string plus equals, and then the masked character. So we can go for our masked character. So again, sorry to keep repeating myself. What's going to happen here? This is the function. So we're going to pass this data into this function. So we're going to pass in this number here as number, and then 4. That's going to be stored in mask. So first of all then, let's go ahead and say n equals mask. So we're going to store that mask, that number 4, in n. Okay, so now we know that. Let's go ahead and say for x in number. So we're creating a loop here. So we're going to grab all these numbers, and then what we're going to do, we're going to use slice to minus 4 numbers off the end of the original number. So what we have now then here in number is essentially that. So now we have that. We now know every time there is a number, we're going to loop through this until we run out of numbers. So 12 times in this case. And then every time we loop around, we're going to store an asterisk here inside of our new variable. So that gives me all of the kind of masked numbers that need to be shown. So once that's been done, let's say string plus equals, and then number, and let's do this the other way around. So number, and then minus n, colon. So this time we're going to grab all the numbers from 12 up until the end. So 4, 3, and 2, 1. So you can see that what we're going to do is we're going to essentially add that to the end of this string we're creating. So this string here now is storing 12 of these asterisks, and then we're going to add to that string the final 4 numbers that are actually going to be shown on screen. Thank you. And then this is a function, so we're going to return what we're going to return string. Okay, so that's what's happening there. Hopefully that makes sense. So let's go ahead and just zoom out a little bit. So let's go ahead and have a look at this. Okay, so int object is not scriptable. So what we're going to need to do here then, we can't loop through that. So let's make that into a string. So by doing that, it enables us to loop through. So let's go ahead and do that. And there we go. So let's take a look at another solution, this time using rjust. So the rjust method essentially returns a right justified string with a given minimum width. So we justify to the right, for example, here, and then we give a minimum width on the left-hand side. And what we can also do is then pass in a character. So instead of showing a blank space, we can then fill that up, in this case with asterisks. So what we're going to do essentially is we're going to grab this number here, and then we're going to justify this number on the right hand side, and then we're just simply going to fill up the rest of the space with asterisks. So that's what we're going to try and do next. So let's have a look at the example. So we're going to need a string. Again, we're not going to use a function this time. So let's go ahead and just create a credit card number. Right, so we're going to just really to showcase this, we're going to print, and then we're going to get that string again. So let's get the string, and then let's say -4 colon. So let's just print that out. If you're never too sure what's going on, just simply print it out. So you can see what's happening here is that we've essentially worked from the end here to here, and we've just grabbed those numbers. Okay, so that's what we've done so far. So we can string this together if you like, because we can now say rjust, and now we're going to make essentially we're going to justify these numbers. So we're going to get these numbers, we're then going to justify them to the right, and then leave some space on the left hand side. So how much space do we need to leave? So let's get the length of the string. Okay, so that's how many characters to leave on the left hand side. And then what we can then do is pass in the character that we want to use. So instead of utilizing a space, we can use, for example, a character. So, but let's just have a go actually without the character. So you can see here there's a space here on the left hand side. So what we need to do now is go ahead and just bring that character back in. And there we go. So let's see if we can decompose this slightly. Let's go ahead and just make this into a variable. So x equals, and then rjust. Okay, so come on, paste that in there, and then we just go ahead and we will then just print x. There we go. Okay, let's see if that works. So name rjust is not defined, so we're going to need to define the actual string. So let's go ahead and do that. So string dot right justify. This is just the length, so how many to justify, and this is the character if we want to kind of have a character rather than a space. So there we go. So you can see that we've right justified here, and this is 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14 15 the 16 numbers. Right, so what happens, for example, if we add 17 numbers? So we want to justify by 17 on the right. So notice that now we're left with an asterisk. So you can start to see actually how this rjust is working. If we have the same number here to justify as the actual number of items we want to justify, notice that there is no justification at all. Okay, so it's only when we start to then add numbers more than the numbers here that we actually then justify. And there we go. So that's an important thing to understand. So if we go back to our original example here, you can see what's happening here is we're just basically starting by getting this string. So what we're returning here essentially is just the last 4 numbers. Now we're justifying by the length of this string, which is 16. Now there's already going to be 4 numbers here, so that leaves us with a justification of 12. We're going to justify by 12, so there's going to be 12 asterisks. Hopefully that makes sense. So this number here is going to be 4321. That's going to grab that there. And then we're going to go ahead and then justify that. And on the left-hand side, we're going to then justify by 16. So that's going to be 4 of those plus 12 kind of spaces. And those spaces are going to be taken up by those asterisks. So that leaves us with the final result. So really this is really an exercise in slicing numbers, because for example, we could do something, I say very simple. So let's grab the last 4 numbers. Okay, so that's going to grab the last 4 numbers and then plus. So we want, for example, to utilize the star, and then we can say times, multiply, sorry, by 4 plus string minus 4. Okay, so let's go ahead and see what that returns. There we go. So you can see that although that isn't the desired result, of course, I'm just kind of really showcasing slicing and putting in or masking certain items in the number here by utilizing the star. So that you can see that that isn't exactly what we want, because there's only 12 numbers there. So let's go ahead and have 8. So you can see that's going to be the case. So what we can do now, for example, is just remove that. And let's say we're going to need 12 of those. And there we go. So you can see how that's working potentially, and how we can then simplify that. So just before we move on to our final function, let's take a look at another example, which I'm just going to leave for you to have a think about. So this is going to be, and there are just so many ways of doing this, of course. Let's go ahead and say, create some sort of slice, 16. And then we're going to have use format this time. And then, so we're just going to grab, I think, the last 4 numbers. There we go. So let's see what this outputs. And there we go. So we have the same output, a slightly different way. Like I said, I'm just going to leave this for you. We're going to move on to the final function. Right, so in this case, we want a little bit more control. So for example, we want to control the number that we're going to insert into the function. We want to potentially identify the starting number where we want to start to make a mask, and then the end number where we want to finish the mask. And then we can also then potentially input into the function the character that we want to use to make a mask. So we're going to control the whole thing here, potentially inputting that into a function to be able to then return the number. So let's go ahead and create a new function. We'll keep that string there. We'll say, let's create a new function called masking again. So yeah, let's think about, first of all, what we're going to pass in. So we're going to say print and then into masking, and then we're going to pass in the string, which is just the credit card number. Okay. And then we're going to pass in the start number to start making the mask, and then the final where to kind of end, for example, and then potentially then kind of what character to use to make a mask. So we're going to pass that in too. So there's 4 elements here. So we're going to say number, start number. So if nothing is entered, we're going to have a default of 0. And then we're going to then say end number. So again, we'll set the default if nothing is entered. And then the character equals, so we'll just define again a default. So let's go for example, @ so that's going to be the default character. So first of all then, let's go ahead and count the length of the number. Okay, so we've got that. So let's go ahead now and, for example, let's grab the mask length. So let's say that the number length, take away the start number, subtract the end number. Okay, so that gives us our mask length. And then let's go ahead and just return. So let's return number. And then we're going to say create a slice here. So that's going to be the start number. And then plus the character times, okay, so it's going to be character times the mask length. And then we're going to say plus the number end number. And that should do it. Right, so let's then give this a go. And there we go. So you can see that's happening. So for example, let's go ahead and not include anything at all. And there we go. So you can see here we haven't defined a start and end number. So therefore the mask simply is just running the course based upon the length of the numbers. So essentially we're just creating a mask with the length of the string here, and then we're just outputting the string. So it looks like we're going to need to find something at least. So you can see that potentially this is going to cause an error. So it's not a very good function particularly. So let's go ahead and have a look at, say, 1 and 4. Okay, so 1 from the left, 4 from the end. So you can see how that potentially is working. So 0 is going to give us, 0 is going to give us what we had originally. And again, we can control this as well. So let's just put this down to, for example, 8. So that's going to show us, as you might imagine, the last 8 numbers. So that does give us a little bit more control, but you can see potentially there's errors here if we have a default of 0. So potentially we would need to consider that. But that's another way of working, a little bit more control, a few more different parameters that we can pass in to control the outcome. So let's finish off having a look at regular expression syntax. Here we're going to use a regular expression, or RE, and it's going to allow us to kind of make a match, for example. So we're only going to, for example, well, we can, for example, select what we want to actually mask. So let's just put this into action, for example. So let's import regular expression. And let's go ahead now and, for example, print something out. So let's go for print re.sub. Okay, so what we're going to do here then, not dub, sub, and then we're going to specify what we want to filter essentially. So we're going to say numbers 0 to 9. So if we match, for example, 0 to 9, we're going to do something. So what we're going to do, well, we're going to replace that with an asterisk. And then we then kind of specify what part of the string we want to apply this to. So let's, for example, now do what we did earlier. So we're just going to do that. So basically what we're doing here is just now slicing that there. So basically if we match 0 to 9 in this slice, then it's going to be replaced by a star. Okay, so then all we need to do after that, of course, I say of course, is just plus the concatenate the string, and then we just grab the last 4 numbers. There we go. Okay, so what you might imagine, that outputs exactly what we were looking to do. So you can see that that's just not quite worked because I need -4. Okay, so let's just do that again. There we go. Right, so for example, if I were to place a letter here, something that doesn't match this, then you can see what's going to happen. The match wasn't made and it wasn't then replaced by a star. So I just wanted to show you that. Potentially you could utilize this in your program at some point. It is fairly useful. It does have many different uses and ways to be utilized. But that was our irregular expression. So that was many ways of potentially thinking about creating masked strings. Hopefully I've given you some things to think about there, utilizing justifying. We didn't actually use ABS. There is an example though, but although there wasn't really any need for it, I was just trying to kind of push that in to the tutorial, and we looked at regular expression. So thank you very much for listening. Like I said, hopefully something there was useful for you, and I hope to see you in the next tutorial.